The economy must be situated in the global economic context. Mr. Speaker, I have here in my hands, and I can read some of the headlines to you. Mr. Speaker, there you are. The headline, Junior Doctors Strike, anger at national scandal of unnecessary NHI deaths as thousands start 3-day walkout. A strike happening in the United Kingdom today. Strike action. Mr. Speaker, I have here in my hands the rationing of families' rationing formula for children as shortage worsens. Mr. Speaker, these are the facts our friends don't want us to tell the Ghanaian people. This is in the United States. Rationing of formula for children as shortage worsens. The headline is here. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, there you are. Why UK supermarkets are rationing fruits and vegetables. This is it. In the United Kingdom, Mr. Speaker, fruits and vegetables in supermarkets are being rationed. And Mr. Speaker, there you are. Several other headlines across the world. And the President took his time to situate our national economy in the context of the global economic situation. So, Speaker, but it's also important to point out that despite all the difficulties we find ourselves in as a country, we here in Ghana, with the greatest of respect, Mr. Speaker, will have to count some of our blessings. Today in South Africa, the South African people are undergoing doomsday. There is power shortage in South Africa. Mr. Speaker, when you go to Nigeria today, long queues. Nigeria is a petrol-producing country. And yet when you go to Nigeria, at the fuel stations, you have long queues of vehicles to purchase fuel. Here in Ghana, Mr. Speaker, the state of our nation is such that here in Ghana, electricity supply is constant and steady. Here in Ghana, Mr. Speaker, petrochemical products are available in abundance, and we're not queuing for fuel. And the President said so. Mr. Speaker, here in Ghana, as a result of our far-sighted policy of planting for food and jobs, we have food in abundant quantities in our market. We are not rationing vegetables, we are not rationing fruits. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the President made a point which I believe we have to pay particular attention to, which is that under his watch, the state of our nation is such that development is taking place in all parts of our country. This is one president, Mr. Speaker, who is shared the national cake across the nation. Every part of our nation, all the 16 regions, those who voted for him, those who did not vote for him, those who support him, those who don't support him. He's taking roads to all parts of the country. He's taking water supply to all parts of the country. Health infrastructure is being developed in all parts of the country. And Mr. Speaker, in my own region of Savannah, the government of President Akufo-Addo has rolled out a very ambitious transportation infrastructure development in Savannah region. And I refer, Mr. Speaker, to the Debre Inland Ports, where a $200 million investment is taking place in Debre. Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, a 2,000-acre industrial park worth $250 million is taking place in Debre. Mr. Speaker, it's happening as we speak. Unprecedented, revolutionary, and the plan, the strategy, the economic strategy of the Akufo-Addo government is to situate the Savannah region as the fulcrum around which our transboundary transportation system will be built in the West African region. And what is the proposal? What is the strategy the Akufo-Addo government is executing? Mr. Speaker, the plan is that goods which are imported into our country will be transported from Akosombo through to Bupe, through to Debre, and to Paga, and to Burkina Faso, to Mali, to Niger, and eventually to the Sahel. Mr. Speaker, this project is a project which has been on the drawing board since President Gogisberg's time, Governor Gogisberg's time. Mr. Speaker, President Nkrumah, through all the government of our country, have attempted to implement and execute this project. He's taking the vision and leadership and confidence of President Akufo-Addo and his government to roll out this project. And Mr. Speaker, let me emphasize once again that the Akufo-Addo government has ensured that development is taken to every part of our country. And if you went to Savannah region today, Mr. Speaker, as a result of this project, and as a result of the massive, truly unprecedented road and other infrastructure developments happening in the Savannah region. Mr. Speaker, one of these I'll invite you over. The people of Savannah region have been very happy and have applauded the Akufo-Addo government for the effort they are making in developing the Savannah region. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, if you wanted the true state of our nation, if you wanted to find out about the true state of our nation, you should visit the Savannah region and visit my beloved constituency of Damango, which is seeing most of the developments I talk about. Mr. Speaker, thirdly, in the President's address, one will find that the President spoke about the mining sector of our country, where I have the privilege to oversee. And Mr. Speaker, a lot of interesting things are happening in the mining sector of our country, beginning with the Gold for Oil program. Mr. Speaker, as you know, one of the major concerns of everyday Ghanaians is being the price of petrochemical products at the pump. And through the innovation of the government under the auspices of the economic management team, which is chaired by the distinguished Vice President of our Republic, His Excellency Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. Mr. Speaker, we've rolled out the policy which has been dubbed the Gold for Oil program, and the President talked about it. Mr. Speaker, over the years, our country has traveled the path where we have not had a policy of gold reserves being built up in our country. The Bank of Ghana, the central bank, unlike other central banks like the English Central Bank, the International Monetary Fund, did not have reserves. And therefore, this government came up with a policy of domestic gold purchase program, where the central bank took it upon itself to raise the needed capital to buy gold, to purchase gold, and therefore shore up its gold reserves. As a result of that, Mr. Speaker, we've gotten to a situation where we are able to roll out a commodity swap between gold and oil. We swap gold for oil. And Ghanaians will attest to the fact that as we speak, the prices of petrochemical products at the pumps are coming down. It is principally, Mr. Speaker, as a result of this innovative policy of gold for oil. And I believe that the Vice President and the President and their government ought to be applauded for this. So, Speaker,
Honourable Minister, begin to descend for landing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in addition to that, Mr. Speaker, in the course of President Akufo-Addo's administration, two important mines have been brought back into operation. The Obuasi mine in 2019 and the Bibiani mine, Mr. Speaker, which had been under care and maintenance for 7 years, is now engaged in production. And very soon, there are going to be 4 other additional mines. We're going to have the Cardinal Resources Namdini mine, Mr. Speaker, which is going to produce 300,000 ounces of gold within the next 15 years. Mr. Speaker, Newmont is constructing a 3rd mine at the cost of $1 billion United States dollars. Azuma Resources Ghana Limited is also expanding its operations and is going to cost them about $200 million investment. And Mr. Speaker, we have begun for the first time in this country to explore for lithium. Mr. Speaker, Precious Mine, Newmont Ahafo, Golden Star Resources are all expanding their operations.
Honourable Minister, thank you very much.
Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, just a minute. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, on that occasion, on that fateful occasion, on 8th March, Mr. Speaker, the President demonstrated to this country that the state of the Ghanaian nation is in good health, is in capable hands, and in times of crisis, Mr. Speaker, you need outstanding leadership. And the Ghanaian people have that leadership in President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your attention.
Thank you very much, Honourable Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. Let me again stay at Savannah, and this time from Damango, I moved to Bolibamboy. Yes, Honourable Yusuf.
I'm very grateful.
Honourable Yusuf, you have 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
This is a deputy ranking.
So deputy rankings are given 10 minutes. Honourable Yusuf, you have 10 minutes. Your time starts now.
On the motion numbered 8, that this House, this Honorable House, thanks His Excellency the President for the message on the state of the nation which he delivered to Parliament on Wednesday 8, 2023. Mr. Speaker, before my brother leaves the hall, I want to draw his attention that I thought he would have used the opportunity to address the issue of Professor Frimpong Boateng. Unfortunately, he decided to leave his area and to veer into other comfortable areas that he wants to talk about. Mr. Speaker, again, I was going to ask my brother whether he was living in isolation. I'm from Savannah region. And all these laudable projects that he's talking about, perhaps I have to tell him to do this, like we were told some years ago, before we are able to tell whether or not these projects exist in that region. Mr. Speaker, I intend to make reference to three statements of His Excellency the President in this year's State of Nation address. One, the issue of 1D1F, where he said that about 106 factories are operational. I also want to talk about a policy that he said is ready for implementation to enhance domestic production, and then again to talk about COVID expenditure and the fact that once again he has turned himself into a clearing agent. But before I do that, Mr. Speaker, I have listened to quite a number of my colleagues at the other side debating, and I thought that there is a need for us to put some records right. Mr. Speaker, it is only under the Nana Akufo-Addo's administration that the number of questions that you answer on the floor of Parliament determines your performance. And now the Minister of Roads has come here so many times to answer questions. And so the government has done many roads. So surprising, isn't it? Mr. Speaker, I also listened to Honorable Carlos Ahinkra, where he said that the NDC government invested about 120 million Ghana cedi and that there was no any progress. Mr. Speaker, I want to make reference to some investments that were made and the beneficiaries of these investments and the impact that it has made. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to mention, with your permission, some pharmaceutical industries. Mr. Speaker, the NDC government under John Dramani Mahama gave them a stimulus package. These are NS Chemist Limited, Entrance Industries and Research Centers Limited, Tiberius Limited, Benadams, and many more. Mr. Speaker, as a result of the investment in these areas, we saw a decline in the importation of so many drugs. Today, as I speak to you, our Ghanaian pharmaceutical companies are able to manufacture some drugs. And so instead of importing them, we no longer import them. And so if somebody is saying that some investment was made under John Dramani Mahama, the impact is that our import bill in terms of some of these drugs has reduced drastically. Mr. Speaker, let me now talk about the 1D1F that I spoke about. Mr. Speaker, the President said 106 factories are operational. But the Minister of Finance in the 2023 budget said 126 factories are operational. The question to ask is, which of them do we take serious? Is it the President who has lied to this House, or the Minister of Finance? Within this short period, 20 factories are missing. Mr. Speaker, we need answers to this. But before they even provide the answers, Mr. Speaker, I can tell you why they have decided to reduce the figure. The reason is that, Mr. Speaker, and if there is any Joy FM reporter here, you bear witness with me. Some companies are running away from 1D1F. One of them is Casa de Ropa. Casa de Ropa, which was part of 1D1F, is running away. Again, cylinder manufacturing company in this country that was supported by 1D1F is also running away. And so many other companies don't want to be associated with 1D, 1F because of deceit. Mr. Speaker, some were put under the list of 1D, 1F with a promise that there will be some tax exemptions. This noble house has refused to exempt those companies. And so what they are doing is to now say that the listers, we are not going to be part of 1D, 1F. And that is what accounted for the reduction from the 126 companies to 106. Mr. Speaker, many have asked that what has the John Dramani Mahama government done when it comes to 1D, 1F? I have given them this list several times. And I have called for a debate. Unfortunately, because they don't read and because they don't want to engage us for the truth, they have always run away from it. And they keep saying that John Dramani Mahama administration has done nothing. I want to take the opportunity to mention some of the factors that were supported under His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. We have Volta Forest Products Limited, we have Caltech Ventures Limited, we have Agro Farms Limited, we have Bibiani Logging and Lumber Company Limited, Apia Farms Limited, Home Food Processing and Company Limited, Migrants Garment Industries Limited, Owumpo Investment Limited, Peters Enterprise Limited, Modern Global Industry. Mr. Speaker, the list is endless. The list is endless. And so when we say that the John Dramani Mahama administration has indeed done very well and has
Honorable Member for Bamboy, we are discussing the President.
Mr. Speaker, the President mentioned 106 factories as an achievement. And I'm saying that he has done nothing. Even though he has used it as a classic program, it has failed. Mr. Speaker, just last 2 weeks or so, I heard the President and his former Minister of Trade fighting over this failed project. The President is saying that 1D, 1F has done very well. He wants to take credit. The former Minister of Trade and Industry was also somewhere saying that that is his baby. He's the one who has done it. I was shocked. I was shocked because these two people were fighting over a failed project. Mr. Speaker, why do I say it's a failed project? 1D, 1F came with 5 objectives, and let's measure them. 1, they wanted to create jobs. Today, unemployment rate is about 14.7. What are we talking about? They said they wanted to reduce importation. The President himself in this House has quoted that our import bill is over 13 billion. It tells you that that project has failed. Again, he said that he's coming out with a policy. A policy to do what? To enhance domestic production. Where is 1D, 1F? When you're now coming with a different policy? Mr. Speaker, this is a president who has told us that he's in hurry. He's in hurry, but it has taken him 6 good years to identify the fact that there's a need for our domestic production to be enhanced so that we are able to import less and to export more. Mr. Speaker, because of time constraint, let me take you to the issue of COVID expenditure.
Go there.
The President told us that there was nothing dishonorable about the foundings of the Auditor General. Since when has he become an Auditor General? And since when has he become the one to speak for his ministers and ministries? Mr. Speaker, the President needs to get ready and meet Public Accounts Committee to speak on their behalf. Because the truth is here. Mr. Speaker, you cannot tell us that you are working with angels, and so all the money that we have received and used under COVID, nothing went untoward. Mr. Speaker, there are so many tax and cash irregularities contained in this audit report. And for the President cannot tell us that there is nothing untoward about the expenditure that were incurred as a result of COVID expenditure. Mr. Speaker, it is important for us to tell the President that he should have limits. When it comes to issues of corruption, he should allow state institutions to work. A situation where immediately state institutions begin to investigate, you hardly will announce that there's nothing wrong with the investigation, with the outcome. Mr. Speaker, when you do that, you are not fighting corruption. And that is why today the President don't longer talk about corruption. He has no moral right to even talk about it because he has turned himself into a clearing agent.
Honourable member, your 10 minutes is up.
No,
Please wind up.
Mr. Speaker, let me conclude. I'm going to conclude by saying that the president said he has formed another subcommittee to come out with a policy and to implement that policy to reduce or to enhance our local production. We are interested in knowing the membership of that cabinet, a sub-cabinet committee. We were here, Mr. Speaker, when some management committee was formed from cabinet to look at the economy that have failed us. Again, the vice president himself had told us that the cabinet that they were having was so solid, and he mentioned their names. Unfortunately, they failed us. We are interested in knowing those who have formed this particular one in order that they don't fail us.
Honourable member, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Is it? No. I was seeking clarification. I'm not debating. I was just trying to get clarification on some of the issues he was raising. Now, is a member for Manson Kanta around? Okay, let me go to Baishian North. Honorable Akwesi Konedu. Honorable, you have the floor. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to item number 8 on today's order paper as a motion to the House to thank His Excellency the President for the delivery of the State of the Nation's address to this House and to the Ghanaian public as a whole. Mr. Speaker, if we forget where we are coming from, we probably will not know where we are and where we want to get to. And for what our appearances seem today, in terms of even age and our structure, our physique, will be reflective of when we were born. Mr. Speaker, I cannot stand here and be looking like a 70-year-old man if certain circumstances may have not afflicted me. Mr. Speaker, I say so in view of the fact that I remember the first day I entered into this House on the 6th of January 2021. Mr. Speaker, just after that day, probably almost about 2 months, there was what we term as the third wave of COVID-19 running through our country. Mr. Speaker, then, the Right Honourable Speaker, Kingsford Bagbin, ordered that the House to be reduced into half and some chairs in these rooms were removed so that we could sit in this room with fewer numbers to be able to contain the spread of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, these things happened in this country. This chamber experienced what we term as COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, we cannot run away from the fact that as a country, we've battled COVID-19. We've battled the Ukraine-Russian war. We've battled so many adversities in our lives in current times that our current situation, we cannot run away from it. That some of it, Mr. Speaker, and almost all of it can in some way be attributable to that fact. Mr. Speaker, we were in this country when we slept for 3 weeks without any productivity. If anybody can recall in our history in this country, for as much as I can remember, any period in our lives that we've been told that we should sleep and never produce, but to consume. If a farmer has almost about 10 acres of land cultivated in maize, and the farmer doesn't cultivate for the next 1 year and only presume to consume what he has cultivated, Mr. Speaker, no matter what happens, the farmer will lose stock and will even not have stock of his maize again if he doesn't replant. If this country slept for 3 weeks, Mr. Speaker, and still survived, and we are surviving, I would want to say much has been done and much continuously is being done. Let me say, Mr. Speaker, one of the most famous quotes of Winston Churchill that I've always loved, and he says, "The kite, Mr. Speaker, rises higher against the wind, but not with the wind." So even in adversity, this country is rising higher. Mr. Speaker, this country some time back, battled with what we term as doomsday, and end up having doomsday entering our dictionary in this world. Mr. Speaker, we have not achieved our light. Mr. Speaker, our friends on the other side, immediately you start talking about power and the sector of power, and you talk about doomsday. They start becoming agitated, and they would ask you, Mr. Speaker, how many megawatts have you added? Even if, Mr. Speaker, even if we've not added 1 megawatt, Mr. Speaker, let me ask our friends on the other side. If you buy a vehicle and you keep in your garage without fueling the vehicle, can the vehicle run on the streets? No. Mr. Speaker, it cannot run. So even if you brought the whole world production of electricity in this country, we still have timetables in this country where we run a 12-hour shift of doomsday. Mr. Speaker, we don't have it now. We don't have it now. Mr. Speaker, we did. You'll be asking, do we have lights at home? You bring all your charges, Mr. Speaker. You bring your clothes, you iron in your offices. Now we don't have that. It was never achieved in the hollow, Mr. Speaker. The completion of a 70 megawatt renewable energy, the Bui Power Authority 50 megawatt, the 1M floating VRA 119. Mr. Speaker, the upgrade of the National Interconnectivity Transmission System, the next. Mr. Speaker, improvement in reliability of distribution of supply of the network, and the increase in national accessibility rate. Mr. Speaker, all of these things haven't been achieved in a vacuum. It has been achieved under His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. That is why now we have been so away. So we may not have added a megawatt, Mr. Speaker, but the point is, of what essence was the megawatt you added if it could not contribute towards the eradication of doomsday? We have eradicated doomsday. Mr. Speaker, we will continuously do that. Mr. Speaker, let me dwell a bit also on health. Mr. Speaker, as at the end of the year 2022, and let me say, if my honorable member for Controver is here, we'll be accompanying him to his constituency, where, Mr. Speaker, will be commissioning a state-of-the-art hospital in that constituency. There have been a construction and upgrade of 5 public health facilities in this country, Mr. Speaker, and I want to name them. Our controversy at the end of 2022 was 95% complete. As I speak with you now, it is 100% complete, Mr. Speaker. If you go to Israel, 95%, Libo, you would have 95%, Wasa Dunkwa, 95%, Bego, Impoho, 95%. Mr. Speaker, the modernization of equipment of almost 4 other facilities. You can talk about the Tetekwashi Memorial Hospital, the Kebi Chibe District Hospital, Ebri and Etibie. Mr. Speaker, the completion of the maternity and children's block of Konfanoche is still onwards. And we are looking at the completion somewhere around the 2024. Mr. Speaker, the construction of the district hospitals at Obuasi and the trauma centers hospital, the rehabilitation of Ingresi Government Hospital, the reconstruction of the central medical stores is also ongoing. The construction of the urology and nephrology centers of excellence at Kolebu Teaching Hospital. Mr. Speaker, these are things that have been done even under these circumstances. Mr. Speaker, it is often also said that history will be kind to us, and history is going to be kind to His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for the excellent job that he's done for us. And it is always being said, yes, excellent job. Mr. Speaker, we tend to forget that because we are out of the woods and because we are here today, we will be able to write history and also read history to the people. But let us also remember, those who are not alive today at the expense of COVID-19 will not be here to cherish what is happening now. They would have loved it today to be alive, to be experiencing what we are experiencing today, rather than be dead because of what have happened to us about 2 years ago, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also emphasize on this point that it is always better, Mr. Speaker, to have what we are experiencing today. And I remember when His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo said that we will be able to resuscitate our economy from the hardship it is going through, but we cannot bring back the lives of people that we lose. And that is why certain decisions were taken at that time. Mr. Speaker, I remember members of Parliament in this House during the outbreak of COVID-19, how they rushed to purchase Veronica bucket hand sanitizers, even at any prices that they will come across, just to be able to send to their constituencies, for their constituents to know they are helping to fight COVID-19 for them. Now they will sit here and forget that these things have been done to save the life. Mr. Speaker, yes, we are in hardships and we are in challenges, but we are moving out of these challenges. I remember somewhere about 2 months ago, when we were purchasing a liter of petrol for about 23 Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, we are reviving the economy. Now we are under 14 Ghana cedis. Mr. Speaker, 13 heading for 12 from the Honorable Deputy Energy Minister. Mr. Speaker, this is what we said, that we will not be able to bring back the lives of Ghanaians that will lose as a result of COVID-19, but we'll be able to bring back the economy when we all pull together. And I would want to urge our friends on the other side that in as much as we have life now, and as much as we have hope now, and as much as good things are being done now, we should all rally behind His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa and help him write the history of this country, so that the future generation, once they come and realize that about some time ago in the 2019 to 2020, when the whole world was struck down with COVID-19, we survived. We went into hardship, but Mr. Speaker, we were able to bring ourselves again. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute.
Thank you very much for speaking within your time, exactly the time. So we will take, is it Honorable Bajura? Yes. Honorable, are you ranking?
15 minutes. Honorable, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the motion and also to add my voice to what my colleagues have just shared with us. Mr. Speaker, the President was candid enough to come to this House to give us an idea of the state of this nation. Mr. Speaker, the President in page 2, paragraph 2 of his statement, permit me to read, Mr. Speaker. He said, Mr. Speaker, it is important that we stress this point because after 30 years of democratic practice, we may be tempted to take it for granted. We need to remind ourselves that our compatriots, the majority of whom are in their early adulthood, have no personal recollection of the struggles that got us to this point in our development. In the same way that only a small percentage of our population can recall life under colonial rule, similarly, the memory of dictatorship, one-party rule, and military rule in receding into the dim past. The struggles that has brought us so far are disappearing in the recess of history. Mr. Speaker, and this was the words of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Ghana, admonishing all of us to know that democracy that we practice today is over 30 years, 3 decades, and that majority of our youth who are below 30 years do not know the struggles we went through as a nation. And that he was reminding us that we should not forget where we came from as our recent past. Mr. Speaker, he continued to state in the same, on the same page 2, the second to last paragraph, and the last word, we will need even more of such bipartisan maturity to meet the challenges confronting us. He was talking about this House, how we thought initially that having a hung parliament, things were not going to be done properly. Mr. Speaker, it is the same parliament, this same parliament, in 30 years, that is requesting His Excellency to talk to the electoral commissioner that the CI that they want to bring to this House will not augur well for this nation. This is the time His Excellency must listen to this side of the house, as well as Ghanaians, especially those who are below 30 years, that we have gone past a stage where you force things on the people. It is time for us to listen to all sides of the divide, either from MPP or NDC or CPP, that the CI is not needed now because the presidents were elected with the CI and NDCs and not the current one that they want to bring to this house. Mr. Speaker, this is exactly what the president has brought to the house, and we must listen and cherish what he has said. Mr. Speaker, this is just the introduction. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I have looked at the Mr. President's speech, and one of the things that worries me is either the speech writers did not do him good, or it was a deliberate attempt to cast doubt into some of the things that he has stated. Mr. Speaker, the President indeed focused largely on issues that he was comfortable with, just as my colleague Honorable Ahin has mentioned. He cleverly decided not to talk about the major infrastructure, housing, and water. And my colleague has spoken about it, so I'll not touch them. But when he mentioned the massive development in agriculture, education, health, irrigation, and road, I laughed. And I heard the Minister of Roads and Highways talking about the fact that this is the only government that has done development projects, especially when the road sector is concerned. I laugh. Mr. Speaker, why did I laugh? Look at this book, the next that was given to us. If you have it, Mr. Speaker, I want to just take you to 2 pages. The first one, page 3, where they give a summary of roads in this nation. Look at the first description, network size. 2017, the total length of road in this country amounts to 78,402. And then cumulatively to 2022, cumulatively, the total road network for this country is 94,203. And even that, there is a note under it that it's going to be validated. Mr. Speaker, if you take 9423 kilometers from 78402 kilometers, this government, within the 6 years or 7 years they've been in period in power, have done only 15,000 kilometers of road. So where is the justification that this government has done more roads than all the governments that has come before? It's a deception in the highest order. If the total network of road is 98,000, and before you took over, there was 78,000 kilometers of road done in this country. And you are telling us that you have done road more than all the government. That's a total deception. Page 3 of 231. And if you look at the breakdown, Mr. Speaker, and that is just a 16% of work done or road done in this country. If you look at the breakdown, trunk road, that's the highways we know. 14,583 was done before you came. And then you came from 2001 to today, you've done from 2021 today, and you've done 14,940. If you take 14,948 from 14,583, you have done only 365 kilometers, and that's 2%. 2% of trunk road. And you come to this house and tout it that you have done roadways more than any other government. Who are you deceiving? Is it the speech writers or the president did not take time to go through this? It's pathetic. This is the house of record. And whatever is turned out here must be the truth. Look at feeder roads. Feeder roads, you have 48,357 roads done to the year 2017. And after 2022, you've added only 2,418 kilometers, making only 4% of the total road network in Ghana under federal rule to be 50,775. The same thing applies to urban roads. Mr. Speaker, then we came to this house with our chest out that we have done more roads than any other government. Who are you deceiving? Let us be candid enough to admit that indeed COVID and Ukraine war has worried us, and so we do not have all the funding. That's why we were not able, because we're in this house. When they said, this time it's going to be road phase 1, what do you call it? Year of road chapter 1, and then the next time year of road chapter 2. Mr. Speaker, what even worries me the most under this road network has to do with the fact that in November 2016, this House has approved a facility for a road for a Volvo for Adidome Bridge. 1st November 2016, before this government took over. As we speak today, year of road 1 and 2, that Volvo for road has not seen the day of light. 7 years, and you come to this house and tell Ghanaians that you have done road more than, when we have even gotten funding for a bridge, you couldn't construct it. So who are you deceiving? Mr. Speaker, I'll take you to another page. When you look at, I'm from the Volta region, and so I'll speak to what I know from the Volta region. If you look at the Volta region roads, Mr. Speaker, with your indulgence, Volta region starts from page 209 of 231. Mr. Speaker, the minister or the president, if you look at the summary of road work done in the Volta region, is very pathetic. Pathetic indeed. Because if you have, in the summary that I called out, when you have 6,728 kilometers of road in the Volta region, and in your period between 2017 to 2022, you've done only 407.15 kilometers. A patch of, it's less than 1% of road network added from 2017 to 2022 in the Volta region. Are the Voltarians not Ghanaians? Are we not distributing the national cake as it's supposed to be distributed? This is from your own book, that you have done only 467 kilometers of road out of 6,728 kilometers of road. Whilst we have even gotten funding for Volvo Bridge, and you couldn't do it. This is discriminatory, if not, what is it? Discriminatory in the highest order. Mr. Speaker, I have not even finished. Looking at roads that the president has touted himself, that is done so well, Volta region. If you look at the asphalt overlay under the urban road, the road project asphalt overlay, page 212 in one municipality, and that is the Hopewell municipality. And that is 9.29 kilometers of asphalt overlay. In only one municipality, we have close to 18 municipalities in the Volta region. And this government tells us that it's only Hopewell that have done asphalt overlay. What about the rest of the district and municipalities in the country? Mr. Speaker, so for me, this government has not been truthful to Ghanaians, and therefore this thing should be thrown into the dustbin, because there's nothing good in this. It's all lies. Mr. Speaker, having talked about that, in my opinion, the government has deceived us. The next thing has to do with corruption. Mr. Speaker, since 2020, this government has been stagnant, has been at one position of, don't look at your time, Mr. Speaker, I haven't gotten anywhere at all. So allow me to land. Mr. Speaker, 2020, Corruption Perception Index by Transparency International tells us that Ghana has had 43 points or 43%. And our position has been 72 out of 180 countries. Mr. Speaker, if your son or your daughter go for an examination and had less than 50% of the result, what has he done? The person has failed. This president, the current president, came on the back of the fight of the fact that he was going to fight corruption. And from 2020, 2021, 2022, he has had 43 percentage points for 3 consecutive years. Not that a year has been taken up, 3 consecutive years. It shows clearly that this government has failed us when it comes to issues of corruption. Mr. Speaker, if he has not failed us, why won't he stand boldly to tell Ghanaians that corruption in his government should be a thing of the past? Why won't he stand boldly and said, yes, indeed, I've not done very well? But he continues. And in this statement, I've not seen anything about corruption. He went ahead and delivered his state of the nation without talking about corruption. With these few words, Mr. Speaker, I thank you so much.
Thank you very much for not allowing me to ask you to stop. Leadership. Available leader. Can I rely on you? What happened was we discussed at the precedent that we are going to have 5 rounds of debate.
Mr. Speaker, at the time, we knew that our colleague, the Fisheries Minister, was, and then the Attorney General was supposed to answer some questions. We since got information that the Attorney General wouldn't be here, but our colleague, the Fisheries Minister, is around. The idea is to do the fisheries questions and then come back to continue with the debate.
Well. So what it means is we will put a hold to the debate and we'll continue it tomorrow. The debate.
No, the thinking is to do the questions because we are only doing the fisheries questions.
So that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah,
so we put hold to the debate and move to questions. Because that was the discussion that we have 5 debaters from each side. We've already had that. So the debate will be over for today, and we will take the question from the Minister for Fisheries. Is that all right?
Right, I'm not. The issue is, are we coming back to the debate after the questions?
I don't think so. Think so. Because you gave me 5. That was what we agreed.
Actually, we gave you 10.
Come again?
We gave you 10, but we gave you 10, they gave you 8. They can't find enough people. We have got 10. But, Mr. Speaker, then our colleague is here. We can do the question. Maybe we can confer, and after that we can go back.
Very well. So, Honorable Minister for Fisheries, you may take your appropriate seat. And whilst the Minister is taking her seat, I will create your indulgence to suspend the House for 5 minutes. Mr. Speaker. Yes, honorable members, I thank you for your indulgence. Let me bring you back to page 3. Page 3 in today's order paper questions. Item 5. We will begin with a question from a member for Nadoli Kaliu. Honorable Anthony Suma to ask his question.
Mr. Speaker, I have his permission to ask a question on his behalf, if you'd indulge us, please.
If you are asking on behalf of a member, I'll not give you the opportunity to ask supplementary question.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Because I have his permission and because the question has already been answered in the book, he's gone through it.
That's my ruling for today.
And he has given me follow-up questions that I should also further ask, because he has seen the answer and there are follow-up that I think would also help the community understand.
The follow-up is supposed to come from the answer that is given.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the answer is in the book, and the answer is in the order paper. He has seen the answer, and he has given me 2 follow-up questions that I can also ask to get proper responses. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Leadership, that is my ruling.
Okay.
Henceforth, if your question is advertised, you should make time to come and ask your question as the owner of the question. If you refuse, or whatever reason you are not able to come, the question will be asked on behalf of a colleague, but you will not be given the opportunity to ask supplementary questions. So, owners of questions should take note. If you ask a question, obviously the question will be advertised. You will know that today or tomorrow you'll come and ask your question. If for whatever reason you are not able to come, fine, you allow someone to ask the question on your behalf, but you will not be given the opportunity to ask supplementary questions. So, it's part of the discussion we had at the precedent. So it's not just coming from me. So, Honorable Member for Adenta, you may ask the question on behalf of Honorable Anthony Suma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, your ruling is well noted. But just to confirm that he's at a committee meeting outside the presence of Parliament. He serves on the Communication Committee. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to ask on behalf of the member for Nadoli Kaliu to ask the Minister for Fisheries and Aquaculture what plans are in place to deal with the following challenges confronting fishermen in the Nadoli Kaliu constituency. 1. Use of illegitimate fishing gears by fishermen from neighboring countries. 2. Difficulty in obtaining nets due to high cost. 3. Dilapidated reservoirs and hatcheries. And 4. Lack of adequate knowledge on laws and regulation on inland water bodies. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, respectfully, Minister, you may respond to him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Use of illegitimate fishing gears from fishermen from neighboring countries. Mr. Speaker, the Black Volta River is bordered by 6 neighboring countries, namely Benin, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Mali, and Togo. The government of Ghana, through Fisheries Commission in the Upper West region, is collaborating with these countries to address use of illegal fishing gears. A multi-stakeholder sensitization meeting has been held in Zambo, Laura municipality, between researchers, media, fisher folks, fishermen and processors, and fisheries officers from both Ghana and Burkina Faso on the use of the illegal fishing gears and its impact on sustainable fishing. A meeting was also held with the Chief Executive of Luba Province at Denu in Burkina Faso, who has assured us of his support in sensitization programs and subsequent enforcement of the laws in his jurisdiction. There are engagements with fisher folks on the Black Volta Basin around the Nadoli-Kalio constituency, and we will update the House on the outcomes. In collaboration with relevant stakeholders, including the Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation, a co-management plan will be developed for the management of the fisheries resources in the Black Volta Basin. Difficulty in obtaining nets due to high costs. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry, as part of encouraging the use of appropriate gears at affordable prices, has been procuring nets for distribution to fishers. From fishers are routed through fisheries associations and endorsed by their metropolitan, municipal, or district assemblies. The Ministry currently is out of stock of the nets. When we procure, we will alert the honourable member so that he can inform his constituents. Mr. Speaker, dilapidated reservoirs on hatchery. Mr. Speaker, the Fisheries Commission has begun the renovation of hatcheries across the country. The one in Via is completed. Mr. Speaker, there is the need to establish co-management system for all the reservoirs, and the Fisheries Commission has begun the processes of engaging community leaders, the MMDAs, and their stakeholders in communities bordering these reservoirs for such co-management systems to help address the management issues of these reservoirs. Without this co-management system, it will be unsuccessful to restock or get maximum value from any investment or effort directed to these reservoirs. Lack of adequate knowledge on laws and regulations on inland water bodies. Mr. Speaker, the Fisheries Commission is undertaking community sensitization on the laws and regulations governing the management of inland water bodies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No. So we'll move to question 1678. Question 1678. And the question is in the name of a member for Evelua Ajomoro, Jura. Did I mention the constituency well?
Right, Honorable Speaker. I think you did quite well today.
Very well.
As compared to
I did quite well today.
Yes.
Yes.
Again, it is Evalue Ajomoro Jura.
Very well.
Yes. Please.
So let's hear you. The minister is available. You have the floor now.
All right. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask the Minister for Fisheries and Agricultural Development what the ministry is doing to take public fisheries observers off the payroll of vessel owners to guarantee the efficiency of their work on board industrial fishing vessels. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the ministry, since January 2021, pays the observers its resources. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable, any supplementary question?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Right, Honorable Speaker, it is good news to find out from the ministry that they've taken over the payroll. But we all appreciate the need to ensure that these fisheries observers do their work. So I would like to inquire from the minister what structures are being put in place to ensure that their payment of their salaries are prompt to prevent bribery and them being caught up in all those kind of acts, which will affect their work, please. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, since the observers are paid from the resource of the Fisheries Commission, we have always made adequate plans to make sure that they are being paid at the end of the month. Mr. Speaker, sometimes the observers will be on high seas before the month ends. So before they come, it will be around first week or second week of the month. And so when they arrive, then their payments are being processed for them. But we have made adequate plans to always make sure that they are paid on time. Thank you.
Honorable, are you okay? You're okay? Very well. Then we move to question 1679. Question 1679. Oh, you wanted to ask another question?
Yes, there's another question, please.
But you said you're okay. Anyway,
No.
let me take your last supplementary question.
Right? Honorable Speaker, please, I thought you were moving to the next question.
Which is also
in my
Oh,
name.
very well. The next question is still stands in your name. Very well. So, question 1679. Question 1679 it stands in his name again. So, Honorable, we may ask you a second substantive question.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker, once again. I rise to ask the Minister for Fisheries and Agricultural Development what the ministry is doing to streamline recruitment on fishing vessels to curb the inhumane treatment meted out to Ghanaians in the industrial fishing sector.
Yes, Honorable Minister. But Honorable Minister, before you respond, let me appeal to my colleagues. It's now 2 o'clock, and I'll still want us to continue. So please let them indulge you to continue the business beyond the normal 2 o'clock time limit. So, Minister, I believe they've agreed with me, so you may respond to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, safety and conditions of work in fishing vessels are under the mandate of Ghana Maritime Authority under the Ministry of Transport. The question will be appropriately handled by the Ministry of Transport. However, sailors are contracted and insurance are conditions for the issuance of fishing license from the ministry. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Honorable Kofi Akon Do you have any supplementary question?
Yes, Right Honorable Speaker, just once. I would like to thank the Minister for directing me to the Ministry of Transport. I think I'll follow up there. But I would like to ask, once the Ministry is in charge of the insurance that is given to the fishing license to the Ministry, I would like to beseech you that you take keen interest when it comes to the issue of licenses, because I'm sure you also bear the same pain when you see our brothers who are trying to seek employment being treated in the way they are when we see the videos and others. So it's just an appeal that you should put an eye there to ensure that at least they are safe as they seek their daily bread. Thank you very much, Right Honourable Speaker.
Thank you very much. I think this is just an appeal. So, Honourable Minister, on behalf of the House, let me thank you profusely for attending upon the House to answer questions from members. We are grateful to you, and you are hereby discharged. Leadership, are we taking one or two more rounds of the debate, or we bring proceedings to a close?
Speaker, because some colleagues have prepared, I think I can only see one in the chamber. So if they also provided 8 names,
well.
We can take one at least before we call it a day.
Okay.
What do you think?
So
we have only one person left in the chamber.
We will now move to Honourable Member for Manson Kwanta, Honourable Obeng Techi. Yes, Honourable, you have the floor now. You have 10 minutes. Let's hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity given me now to contribute to the President's State of the Nation address. Mr. Speaker, it's not by chance that the President has to come to the floor to present a special statement in terms of the condition of the nation. Because we are not living in the jungles, and as human beings, we are governed by the law. The Constitution of Ghana provides the basis for which we are being governed, and to ensure that we have a peaceful coexistence among ourselves. Mr. Speaker, if I may refer to the preamble of the Constitution, we shall see that the Constitution provides that we, the people of Ghana, in exercise of our natural and inalienable right to establish a form of government which shall secure for ourselves and posterity the blessings of liberty, equality of opportunity, and prosperity. And then, at the final end, say that do hereby adapt, enact, and give to ourselves this Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this same Constitution established the office of the President, in whose hands you've placed the control and management of this country. If you refer to Article 57 of the Constitution, we shall see that the Constitution is making provision for the office of the President, which says that there shall be a President of the Republic of Ghana who shall be the head of state and head of government and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. Mr. Speaker, such is the importance of the office of the President that it has to this country. In furtherance of this provision, the Article 67 is also giving direction as to how the President will have to account to the people of Ghana what is taking place and happening in this country. If I may read the Constitution once again, Article 67, the President shall, at the beginning of Parliament and before a dissolution of Parliament, deliver to Parliament a message on the state of the nation. Why is the President has the honorable duty and responsibility to deliver to the nation this important and august statement of the state? Mr. Speaker, the issue is that the President, as people of the country, we are entrusting our destiny to his hands, and we being the representative of the people, as Parliament, has to come to us and tell us as to what he has been doing the nation, the state of the nation, as to what we're giving him, the results of the country, the good people of the country, what he has so far achieved for us. And like a company, the state of the nation is telling us that at any point in time, when the nation is getting to the close of a year, you must know as to how far we have gone. And this is also conforming to our tradition before the advent of colonial rule and the advent of modern state of governance. Every year in our traditional setup, there is a festival during which the people gather and look back and see what they've done. And based on that, they are able to prepare into the next stage or the next year what they expect to achieve, because based on their past, it informs them what steps should be taken to move on. So this nation is telling us that as people, at any point in time, we have to take stock of what we have done so far, and that will prepare us into the following year and do things better and improve upon the law. Mr. Speaker, when you look at this situation, then Article 179 is also enjoining the President to do something unique and important, which also says that the President shall cause to be prepared and laid before Parliament at least 1 month before the end of the financial year estimates of revenues and expenditure of the government of Ghana for the following financial year. And clause 2A shall be classified under programs or activities which shall be included in the bill to be an appropriation bill, and which shall be introduced into Parliament to provide for the issue from the Consular Fund or such other appropriation funds of sums of money necessary to meet the expenditure of the country. Mr. Speaker, this is telling us that this presentation of the State of the Nation address has the consequential issues that have been provided in the Constitution, and of which the President has the responsibility to let the country know where we are going and where we are coming from. Mr. Speaker, and on this basis, we may establish that the action of the President is also embarked by the Minister of Finance, who is giving the onerous responsibility to the President to come to the House per the Public Administration Management Act, which also tells that Act 216, Act 921, Section 2A, which is also telling the Minister to come to the House and present the budget of the nation based on what the President has presented to the House as the state of affairs, upon which the Minister of Finance is coming to the House to lay before Parliament the estimates and the expenditures that will raise our budget, that we have to raise revenues to make sure that we are able to meet our expenditure. Mr. President, Mr. Speaker, based on this, the President in the Nation address came clearly with certain areas which I want to address. The President touched on the issue of justice, because the Constitution is making sure that the people of this country are given fair hearing, are given fair opportunities to develop themselves and to ensure that we all live in an environment of peaceful coexistence and not like the jungles. So the President lamented on justice system. He further went on to talk about education, and then also talk about the issue of our roads, and then finally infrastructure and other matters. Mr. Speaker, if I may take us to the issue of our court system, which is in page 14, in the real provision made by the President in the Special State of Nation address. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the paragraph 2, the President made emphatic point that we may have courts that have not been fit for purpose and do not provide suitable facilities for the efficient administration of justice. The inadequacy means that people have to travel long distance to gain access to court. As someone who for years earned my living as a practicing lawyer, I have first-hand experience of the unacceptable state of courthouses around the country. Based on this, the President has embarked on the construction of 120 courthouses with accompanying accommodation for judges across the country. Indeed, 60 have been completed and others are in various states of completion. Mr. Speaker, you also mentioned 6 new regional high courts fitted to judges' residence are also being constructed in the new regions. That is Ahafo, Bro Ahafo, Northeast, Oti, Savannah, and Western North. 3 of the courts, that is those in the Northeast, Oti and Savannah, have been completed and commissioned. Those in the Habo and Blue East and Western region will be completed by April. Mr. Speaker, it tells you how a president is actually endowed with knowledge, with that experience to ensure that the justice system should be fair enough, should be distributed everywhere so that people can go about their goods and ensure that they are not cheated or they are not sidelined in terms of going about their economic and social activities. That is what thing about the fairness of the people in conducting their activities. Mr. Speaker, he also mentioned that appeal judges based in Kumasi who are mandated to handle appeals from the northern part of the country, they have also been given residential status of the modern state-of-the-art residential places. It tells you our president thinks about his people to ensure that they carry about their activities without fear of favor and they can do whatever they want to do and they ensure that justice is not denied them anytime that they have any problems to look at. Mr. Speaker, at the same time, the president touched on education. If you look at page 15 and you look at paragraph 345, the president is talking about how TVET and STEM feature frequently in all conversations about education. Technical vocational education is being given the place of honor that they deserve. Since the realignment of introduction of free TVET, enrollment in TVET schools has increased from 13,000 in 2021 to 47,000. Mr. Speaker, that tells you that it's not only through the academic where people look for the normal old system traditional education, but today the president is emphatic on the need to train other people in the area of technical and vocation. That is also looking at psychomotor of the development of any child who is going to school. The whole being development of any person in the country has been taken over the president. That tells us that our president is actually taking care of it. Mr. Speaker,
you may begin to wind up your
right.
Almost.
On agree to look at page 16, the president is emphatic on the issue of where he's ensured that agric is mechanized to ensure the state is also adequately certified in terms of food production and then ensuring that all manner of persons in this country are certified in terms of when it comes to feeding. Mr. Speaker, infrastructure too in the roads has been provided for in the present address, while road infrastructure has been considered because when we look at the old days, we are having some few settlements and some few trunk roads. But today we have a lot of settlement residential areas demanding more roads. Mr. Speaker, that may be enough. And we want to make an appeal that even though government is looking at the road infrastructure, those in the rural areas, particularly Manso and Manso Quanta and the other aligned constituencies, we are also praying that apart from the overlay of asphalt, we also need attention. Rural communities also need attention.
Thank you very much.
And I want to say that people of Ghana, apart from demanding our fair share of money, they also have to be obliged that we are responsible to pay enough taxes. As Honorable member, we have to honor our tax obligations and help our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Your time is up. You've exhausted your time. Thank you. Let me now come to Honorable Yomi. Honorable Yomi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You are a ranking.
Yes, please.
And therefore you have 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to contribute to the motion on the floor to thank His Excellency the President for the message on the state of the nation which he delivered to Parliament on Wednesday, 8th March 2023. Mr. Speaker, my first preamble to my contribution is stemming from the President's own statement he made on page 7, paragraph 3, where he said, Mr. Speaker, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, let me state emphatically that we have not been reckless in borrowing and in spending. Mr. Speaker, my take on the economy is to look at the monetary side that Bank of Ghana ought to be managing, and then the fiscal side that the Finance Ministry and led by the Finance Minister should be also handling and managing efficiently. Mr. Speaker, the monetary policy is the responsibility of the Bank of Ghana, and just to indicate exactly what they do is to manage the macroeconomic policy laid down by the central bank and the management of the money supply and the interest rates to achieve macroeconomic objectives like inflation, consumption growth, and liquidity. Mr. Speaker, a very noble responsibility to ensure that we do not have some indicators like the high inflation that has bedeviled this country. They are expected to manage the money supply in the system through the tools available to them. But what we see is whenever the policy committee meets and increase interest rates with a clear intention of mopping excess liquidity from the system so that, of course, we don't have too much money circulating. And that is done usually through high interest rates. And of course, that has its own attendant results of squeezing businesses in a way that they will not have access to funds to operate with. But all geared towards managing inflation. And that is good. But at the same time, the same Bank of Ghana gives out money or funds government through the printing of money, and sometimes, and almost all the time since 2020, beyond the 5% threshold that they ought to be doing, which is an illegality that has brought us where we are. And the issue is this: what are they trying to achieve? You are trying to use the monetary policy to mop excess liquidity from the system because you want to control inflation, but at the same time using the back door and releasing more money illegally to the government, which is going to be doing more expenditure, carry on more expenditure by way of introducing more money into the system, defeating the very purpose of the monetary policy that was actually announced. And so, Mr. Speaker, if you watch carefully, figures such as in 2020, they funded government to the tune of 10 billion Ghana cedis. That is beyond the 5% threshold that you ought to be allowing, which is 5% of the previous year's revenue that was actually collected. In 2021, they spent or printed in excess of 35 billion in terms of funding for government. Then at the same time, in 2022, 50 billion Ghana cedis was used to fund government. And then also in this year, so far, about 40 billion. And you look at all this, you are funding government illegally, but at the same time announcing policy rates, which is intended to be controlling the money circulation in the system. So you're actually giving and then taking and then making life difficult for a lot of people in the operators in the economy, businesses alike, and so on in the Ghanaian economy. Mr. Speaker, that is one area that I think the action and inaction of the Bank of Ghana ought to be looked at and watched, because they've never been sincere. And how do you describe this? Is it not reckless in terms of decision? Is it not, in a way, not a mismanagement of the monetary policy in terms of ensuring that you are controlling the macroeconomic indicators in the system? That is, for me, a way of probably lying, for want of a better word, that you are intending that you want to control money circulation in the system, but at the same time pumping more money illegally into the system. At the end of the day, you have achieved nothing, only to make life difficult for everybody, including businesses and all the other operators in the economy. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the fiscal side of the economy, which is a direct responsibility of the Finance Ministry, you then to ask yourself, why? You are borrowing money to fund projects. You are borrowing so that you can be able to pay back your interest on these loans that you are taking. I was thinking that at least the managers of the debt should be able to be candid and ensure that government stays the course, so that it does not deviate from what and why they've gone out there to borrow. But it appears we are borrowing and spending on recurrent expenditure, borrowing and spending on other activities, which in the end does not result in our ability to pay back the interest and at the same time our principal. That is another way of recklessness. Unfortunately, this is where we are now today. And so the fiscal side, I will actually suggest that government should be candid, and maybe all here in this house must agree and advocate that the managers of the economy, in fact, there should be an independent managers of the debts of this country, so that will be taken away from the responsibility of the finance minister, so that at least that can be able, they will be able to help advise government on decisions with regard to what to borrow, rates at which you borrow, how to spend, and on what, so that at least all these things can be managed efficiently, so that we don't find ourselves in the situation we find ourselves in. Mr. Speaker, the president was praising himself. I mean, that he's actually spent the COVID fund, various money that were allocated and given to it to manage the pandemic. He spent it so well, and there can never be any evidence of corruption or any evidence of misappropriation or mismanagement anywhere. But I was thinking that, Mr. Speaker, I was thinking that His Excellency the President should have just allowed the institutions that are mandated under the Constitution to carry out such investigations, to come out and praise government and give it a clean sheet that nothing has happened. I mean, why is President all the time eager to, as it were, preempt or probably, get his officers off the hook by more or less
nobody's praising
saying that, okay, we are clean, we are clean, we are clean. When the books are not saying so, the Auditor General's reports are not telling the same story. A lot of other institutions are not telling the same story, as His Excellency the President is indicating. And so why? I think His Excellency the President should rather allow the institutions that are mandated to do this work to do their work without fear or favor, so that at least they can come out with the facts in order for us all to know the true state situation with regards to the monies that were made available, how they were spent, and so that we all can be very clear in our mind. I remember this House wanted to go into the investigation of this fund that so far had been given to the government, and there was even a motion that was supposed to be moved. But we knew what happened. Our colleagues from the other side vehemently resisted, and it became a situation where one could clearly understand that the government was not ready for that. Why? What do you have to hide? And so some of these things gives and lend credence to the perception that, look, there's a whole lot wrong with the whole fund, how it was spent, and how it was managed. So we need to look at all that, so that at least it doesn't take Mr. President to come and say that I am clean, so therefore we all take it that he is clean or the government is clean. It doesn't take that. Now, Mr. Speaker, I was really taken aback a little, as others earlier had indicated, that yes, we are somewhat in a kind of shock and a state of insecurity. And of course, I just, as a matter of emphasis, that yes, I would have been happier to hear His Excellency the President to say a word or two about the happenings in the country with regards to security. We mentioned several places, Baku, and then of course, just of recent, Ashama. The way it happened. And he is the commander-in-chief. And I was thinking that on a platform such as this, he would have made mention of one condemning what had happened to the young soldier, and at the same time condemning same which was also meted out to the people of Ashama by the military, so that at least indicates maybe some effort to say, okay, we'll go into the matter and see where things went wrong, so that we do not see these things happen anymore. This silence, this loud silence by especially the president on this matter leaves so much to be desired. And I think it didn't tell us the true state of the nation and actually what is happening with regards to our security. Mr. Speaker, let me touch a little bit on the road sector that was mentioned. And of course, His Excellency the President gave us a whole document indicating successes in their constructions and all that. I will not go beyond my constituency. I will stay in South Tongue and talk about South Tongue to say that, yes, I would have been happier to hear that roads such as Agave-Apadume Road, which was under construction before the NPP government came into power, and then the road from Yove down to Amedome to Gamenu, and so on. Such roads were roads that were under construction. We had contractors that were on those roads with their equipment working on a daily basis. What happened? If you really meant to do so well and want to be praised, what happened to the spoiling of these roads? I mean, these are the matters that need to be discussed. And so, in talking about an achievement in one community or municipality to describe the entire Volta region, I think it's an insult. That you have just worked in one particular, maybe community or one constituency, to say that you are using to describe 18 other constituencies. I think this one leaves too much to be desired. I think there's a need for His Excellency the President to probably withdraw this document and then give us some little piece. Because I just want us to really appreciate one thing, that look, you can't do that. If you say you have done this, Volta region, I mean, you've really shortchanged that. His Excellency the President didn't probably know all the issues. I believe so. So we think that there's a need for him to take a closer look at Volta region, so that when next time he brings documents such as this, we can talk positively about it. Other than that, this one holds nothing for us. Mr. Speaker, yes, you would also notice that throughout the entire State of the Nation address, His Excellency the President didn't mention anything on the other sectors, even though he actually indicated that he wanted to talk about other sectors that actually are more or less directly related to the economy or has direct impact on the economy in terms of their performance and all that. Sports is so important because, you see, Mr. Speaker, anytime there's an event, say in any area in Brekum, in Sugakofe, or in Accra, people move with sports. People drive with sport. They go and spend in those local economies. They improve those local economies. They add to the economies of those places. So if you cannot discount the contribution of sports in the scheme of things. So I was really alarmed. And obviously we also have this major tournament that we want to host, and these African Games. There'll be a whole lot of stories about it. The difficulties, the challenges with ANOCA, the AU Commission, and then the local organizing community having challenges, the contractors not having enough resources.
Honourable Member, your time is up. Please.
So on this note, there's a need for Mr. Excellency the President to mention that yes, all is going well and that the resources will be going to us to ensure that we have a smooth and a successful hosting of the African Games come next year, as it's indicated. So, Mr. Speaker, if you look at all of the content of this State of the Nation, I think it's hollow. It doesn't really tell much. So, I don't know what else and how to describe it. But with this, I leave it for Ghanaians to judge for themselves. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So you take the last round of contributors. Last round. So we'll come to Honorable Alice Ajari. Honorable Alice Ajari. Honorable, you have 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to add my voice to the President's State of the Nation address. Mr. Speaker,
Honorable, speak up a bit.
Okay. We were all here when the President came in. And the President didn't only come in to give promises, he came in to give an account of where we're coming from, where we are, and where we are going as a country. So, Speaker, I take you to page 4 and then the 4th paragraph, where the President tried to take us back a little bit, where he said, Mr. Speaker, in 3 years, we have reduced inflation to lowest level in 7.8%. That was in January 2020, the lowest since 1992. For the first time in over 40 years, we had a fiscal deficit below 5% of GDP for 3 years in a row. For the first time in over 20 years, the balance of trade, that's the difference between export and import, has been in surplus for 3 consecutive years. Our current account deficit is shrinking. The interest rates are declining, and the average annual rate of depreciation of the cedi is at its lowest for the first term in government in the Fourth Republic. Our economic growth has rebounded to place Ghana among the fastest growing economies in the world. 3 years in a row, an annual fastest growing economy in the world. Mr. Speaker, the President did talk about this so that we will know and appreciate the fact that after we took over power from the NDC in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, up to 2020, everything was okay with the country, and that we were among the fastest growing economies in the world. There came in the COVID. COVID, people don't want to accept that it really did affect the lives of Ghanaians, just as it did affect other parts of the world. Initially, we thought it wasn't going to affect us because we are in Africa. So it wasn't too much preparation made for this. We realized the next morning it was at our doorsteps. Government had to put in measures. So we had a commander-in-chief who gathered the boldness to come out to address Ghanaians that this is the situation we face as a country, and that he will make all the necessary sacrifices to make sure he saves lives. He doesn't care at the time how the economy will be, but he knew that economies can be fixed, but lives cannot be brought back. He said this, went down with all Ghanaians. We applauded him that, it was a good decision. Nobody could go out to work. All industries were affected. Imports of goods and services, everything ceased. Schools were closed down. A lot has to go through. The people have to go through a lot so that at least we'll be able to serve our country and the people. With all these expenditures government made, it really affected our economy since it was then growing up. Mr. Speaker, so when we went through all this, and it did affect us, now it was the need that after COVID, the country needs to get back. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, not even the super economies have recovered fully from the COVID pandemic. It did affect, America, the Great Britain, they've not all recovered. But as a growing nation, we are also trying to get back on track. Mr. Speaker, we look at, the areas the President talked about. We talk about the T-bird. The T-bird service is a good area or an area of interest because we know that at a point in our lives as Ghanaians, people lost interest in technical and vocational education. because people go to school after the high school, they don't know where to go again. Now there has been hope restored in the technical and vocational education. We have come to realize getting handymen and women in the country is the way to go, because our structure of education is such that we only do certain areas, but we don't do much more practical work. So now you look into the president's State of the Nation, where he talked about 304,000 recruitment in the area of Tibet. This means that so much money is going to be spent on the teachers. And then the enrollment also increased from 13,000 to 47,000. All these people, Mr. Speaker, we talk about, being enrolled, the 47,000, they don't pay fees. Infrastructures are being provided. And then again, they are getting everything for free. So where are all these monies coming from? It's coming from the government. And where is the government getting the money from? This is the question that we need to ask as a people. Government is still considering, the road areas. There have been so many construction works that has gone on. Even in the midst of the COVID, there was so much going on. We look at interchanges that have been fixed and those that are also in progress. We have the Tamale interchange, which contract was awarded in September 2018. We have the Adringano, which is April 2020. The PTC interchange, which is September 2018. The Corn Barrier interchange, the Wenya interchange, Pram interchange, Savannah interchange, Obitebi interchange, phase 2. And not to talk of the Pokwase interchange, the Tema motorway interchange phase 1 that was awarded in December 1st, 2017. The East Legon underpass, August 2017. Mr. Speaker, consider all these huge projects. It takes a chunk of our GDP. We spend so much money, and then we want all this to be completed because there's so much traffic in Ghana. There's so much traffic in Accra. This is to improve efficiency and effectiveness of Ghanaians, make life, easier. We are spending so much, but people keep asking, what are we using the monies for? What were the loans used for? Last year we signed a contract for a road from Pokwase, sorry, Mr. Speaker, we signed a contract for Peduase through the Manfred to Koforidua, which cost almost 200 million euros. The same way the government is trying to construct a bridge to cross the Afram Plains, the Adolso to Afram Plains area, which is another huge cost, almost another 200 million euros. Government is spending so much to make sure that businesses will grow, because we consider that of the Afram Plains Road, government knows the kind of businesses that goes through, and people have to go through all the mountains to be able to bring goods here, making it very difficult for businesses. Government thought about it as an area that needs to be improved. Government is working on that as well. Mr. Speaker, we have so much debt as a country, and people would want to believe that it is this NPP administration that has accumulated all these costs. It is about time members in the House know and give a true interpretation of the Ghana's debt to Ghanaian people. We came in to inherit a $20 billion in 2017 when we took over office. And Mr. Speaker, we shouldn't forget the fact that all our loans are in dollars. So, if the
Honorable Jare, your time is almost up. You may wind up.
So, Mr. Speaker, when we add current debt together to the inherited ones, and it's being converted into cedis, now people begin to scream. Why is it that the MPP administration is owing so much? The debt of today is not for MPP alone. It's for previous government that has been put together for the government to deal with. So Ghanaians should all understand that it is a debt for us all, and that when we come to the House, we should believe that the way to go about it is to work together with the government to make sure that Ghana becomes
Thank you very much, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much. We will take the very last one from Honorable Peter Nuchu. Honorable, you are ranking member, you have 15 minutes. You may have the floor now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much again for the opportunity to make some comments on the State of the Nation address as presented by the President. Mr. Speaker, you know the lizard very well. Whenever a lizard falls from a tree, it looks around. If there is nobody to praise him, he praises himself. And that is what exactly the MPP is doing. Having realized that they have performed abysmally and no one is praising them, everybody here on the majority side is praising them from beginning to end. So that is how the MPP is now, like a falling lizard. Mr. Speaker, let me inform you and the House that we know the Right to Information Act. When the Deputy Minister for Education was contributing today, she mentioned the Right to Information Act. But I want to remind her that her minister or the Ministry of Education failed to give information to one organization. And the Minister of Education was fined 50,000 Ghana cedis for failing to provide information. So even if the act is there and the ministry is failing to provide information as required, then they are creating a loss to the state financially. So the Minister of Education must know that. Mr. Speaker, we all know that education is very, very important for growth in this country. And the President, in his address, touched briefly on just education, one aspect, that is TVET, forgetting about the other areas that are essential to the development of education in this country. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the basic level of education, that is where the challenge is. The fundamentals there are ignored. The foundation is ignored. And research has shown that there are over 3.5 million pupils in basic schools that have no furniture to sit on in our schools. You will realize that these children have to carry kitchen stool to school to sit on. Some carry plastic chairs to school to sit on. And we are here touting our achievements. What achievements are we touting? When the fundamentals are weak, the basic schools are weak. You look at the classroom infrastructure, we still have over 2,500 basic schools still operating under trees and dilapidated structures. What are we doing as a nation? And the President, in his address, did not mention anything about basic education in this country. Teaching learning materials are not available in our basic schools. The capitation grant, Mr. Speaker, for 2 years now, government or the ministry has defaulted in paying capitation grants to our schools. So you realize that school authorities, especially at the basic school, use their own money or resources to run the schools. If you do this, are you motivating them to perform as expected? That is why we are having very weak foundation at the basic level. So it is unfortunate that the president did not mention anything about basic education in our schools. Mr. Speaker, if you look at a number of issues that are bedeviling our basic schools, you will realize that the teachers in our basic schools are demotivated to do or perform their duties as expected of them. So morale is very low among teachers in the basic school. So there is the need for the president and the Ministry of Education to realize that they are failing in that direction, to provide infrastructure, to provide furniture, and to resource basic schools to do well. So what is happening is that the students that we produce at the basic level to graduate to the secondary level enter schools with very poor grades. Mr. Speaker, we are all happy that we have a free senior high school as a constitutional mandate. And we are happy, we are always shouting free SHS. But you look at it carefully and realize that the free SHS that we are promised, what we are getting out of it is not the best. We are only talking about quantity and not the quality. The president told us about 2 million students have benefited under the free SHS. Yes, fine. But what quality are we putting in them? We are not doing so. So what is happening is that they are only passing through the walls of the senior high schools. Currently, the problems facing our senior high schools are so hydrated that we need to make sure that we provide infrastructure in our secondary schools. If you go to the senior high schools now, you will realize that the dormitories are choked. Students are finding it very difficult to pass through the beds because projects that were started by the previous government have been abandoned and nothing is being done about them. So, Mr. Speaker, if we say free senior high school, yes, but are we committed really to the free senior high school? Now, the minister is talking about closing down non-performing or poorly performing senior high schools. He has no power to do that. He, as a minister, only formulates policies. It is the duty of the Ghana Education Service to implement the policies. So you can't be the policy maker and the implementer at the same time. The issue is that we have not done any, the ministry has not done any research or investigations into why some of these senior high schools are not performing very well. So getting up to say you are going to close them down is neither here nor there. Mr. Speaker, I remember very well that in 2015, when I was the vice chairman of the Committee on Education in this house, the then Minister for Education, Professor Nana Opoku-Agyeman, brought before this house a loan facility of 156 million Ghana cedis, $1 million, to improve upon facilities in the low-performing senior high schools. Mr. Speaker, that facility was to make sure that we upgraded facilities in our low-performing senior high schools. And part of that facility was also to provide 23 E-blocks, which were completed and commissioned and are doing very well now. Then again, we use that money to upgrade facilities in the low-performing senior high schools in the country. And also, there was training for mathematics and science teachers with that loan facility. And Mr. Speaker, I can tell you the outcome or the results of those interventions in the low-performing schools, secondary schools in those days. Now, they have done very well, and their results are improving. This ministry, for now, has not done anything to that effect. So if you say you are going to close them down because they are not performing well, what interventions have you put in place? The interventions are not there. So, Mr. Speaker, I am of the view that there is the need for this government to sit up as far as secondary education is concerned. The president promised this country that he was going to build 350 new secondary schools on the assumption of office. As we speak today, he does not tell us, and he cannot tell us the number that he has put up. We are waiting for him to tell us that out of that promise he made to Ghanaians, the 350, he has built so and so number, and where are these schools located? Mr. Speaker, those that he even came to inherit, there are projects that were ongoing to make sure that secondary education was given the best facilities. They are yet to do that. So, Mr. Speaker, I am of the view that the president failed to give us an account of the state of education in this country. He only spoke about STEM schools. Mr. Speaker, we all know, we all agree that we need to improve upon science and technology. But where you go and cite such schools, where you already have very good schools, like if we talk of Accra, you have Presec Legon, we have Achibota, we have Laboni, we have Accra Academy. They are all offering science in these schools. Then you come and put another science school in Accra, neglecting those in the rural areas, those in the regions. And what are you doing? In Accra, we don't need any science, any new science school. Take it to the regions where those schools are needed. So, Mr. Speaker, the president must come again. I think he only wanted us to know that he is attempting to provide STEM education. Yes, fine. But how many have they been able to complete since 2017? When every year he mentioned it, every year it was in the budget. How many STEM schools have been completed? Mr. Speaker, if you go to our senior high schools, we have a number of abandoned projects there. I don't think there's any senior high school in this country where you don't have an abandoned project since 2017. What are they doing about it? All these sums of money invested in these projects have become wasted resources. So these are reckless abandonment of what? Projects. And they should be held responsible for it. When the children or the students need these facilities, you are coming to build new ones and abandon those ones. Who should be held responsible, Mr. Speaker? So I am of the view that, Mr. Speaker, we must redefine education in this country. What do we want for our children in the future? Are we only making them go through the walls of their classrooms, or we are teaching them something that can help them in the future? So when you see the situation, education at this time is in shambles, and we must rescue education. If we don't do so, Mr. Speaker, let's forget about it. Because either at the basic level, either at the secondary school level, everything is in disorder. So I will wish, Mr. Speaker, that the president should give this country, this nation, the hope for the future, that education will receive the needed attention. Finally, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the situation as we find ourselves now, GET Fund has been the only source of funding all educational programs in this country since 2017. And GET Fund, if GET Fund today were to be a bank, they would have filed for bankruptcy. Because the government, the Ministry of Finance, is no longer resourcing GET Fund. Now, GET Fund is going to receive only 17.5% of their resources. Instead of 4.6 billion Ghana cedis that GET Fund should receive this year from the 2.5%, GET Fund is going to receive only 1.8 billion. Mr. Speaker, why are we doing this to education in the country? So, Mr. Speaker, we need to rescue GET Fund from the Ministry of Finance. He is sabotaging the GET fund to such extent that it has been stifled. They cannot breathe. So there's a need to decouple GET fund from earmarked funds. If we don't do that, we should forget about funding education in this country. And as we talk now, the textbooks that they printed or the publishers printed for the various basic schools, they have not paid them. And these were publishers who took loans, dollar loans, to print the textbooks or publish the textbooks for the basic schools, and they have not paid them. The interest is compounding every month for them. So, Mr. Speaker, if we talk about education, we should not, the government should not deceive us that they are doing their best. What is important now is that let's redefine education in this country. Let us redefine education in this country and make sure that we provide quality education. We should look at the facilities that are in our basic, secondary, and tertiary institutions so that we give them the education that they need, not to pay lip service to education in the country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. So today we've had 7 from each side, 7 contributors from each side. We will take one statement, and the statement has been with us for all this while. Leadership, can we take it? Well. So the statement is on police brutality resulting in the tragic death and unjust killing of Shadrach Alu at West Hill Mall in Accra on 30th January 2023 by Honorable Dorcas Tofi, Jomoro Constituency Member of Parliament. Honorable, you have the floor. Let's hear you.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, thank you for allowing me to make this urgent statement. This statement is about the gory event that resulted in the tragic and unjust killing of Shadrach Alu, a citizen of Ghana, at the West Hills Mall in Accra on the 30th day of January 2023. Mr. Speaker, permit me to humbly convey through you to this august House the profound and heartbreaking sorrow that the deceased family, the people of Mpataba community, and the entire constituency of Jomro are experiencing. I call on this Parliament of the people to stand in solidarity with the grieving family in these difficult times, to do everything possible within its power to ensure that justice is served. Mr. Speaker, Shadrach was a 33-year-old father to a 4-year-old boy. Shadrach hailed from Mpataba in the Jomro constituency of Ghana. Until his unfortunate death, he was a graphic designer, having completed high school many years earlier. The facts suggest that the time of Shadrach's unfortunate death, his family had completed travel arrangements that would have seen him fly from Ghana to Germany the next day. His flight to Germany was also booked and confirmed for the said travel. Mr. Speaker, between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on the day that Shadrach prematurely lost his life, he had visited the West Hills Mall to buy some few items for his new apartment. He was in the company of one Ibrahim Sachi. As they were walking through the mall, the 2 men were stopped by a police officer who demanded to search the deceased without a warrant. The said police officer had not, at the time, indicated that he had arrested the deceased. As a result, the deceased refused to be searched by the officer. When the police insisted on conducting the said search, Shadrach left the bag he was carrying with the police officer and took to his heels. The police officer quickly raised a false alarm that Shadrach was a thief, drawing the attention of other persons nearby, including the private security officers stationed at the mall. Mr. Speaker, any fair-minded Ghanaian who watches the horrendous scenes captured by videos widely circulating on social media on the final moment of Shadrach's life will be horrified and deeply traumatized by the sequence of events and actions that claimed his life. The deceased was handcuffed while he was on the floor, beaten several times, and was heard groaning helplessly in pain, virtually begging for his life, even though Shadrach had become incapacitated and vulnerable during his ordeal. The videos show a uniformed police officer kneeling close to his head, tasing him several times in the full glare of other police officers, private security officers, and some of the staff of the West Hills Mall. Mr. Speaker, in the circumstances of this matter, it would seem that the police orchestrated the awful and inhuman treatment that Shadrach suffered in his last moment on earth. Indeed, no citizen or resident of Ghana, no matter his alleged crime, deserves that kind of extrajudicial treatment. Simply put, Shadrach, deliberately killed by peace officers paid by the taxpayers to protect Ghanaian lives. Alternatively, he lost his life due to their recklessness and/or negligence. Mr. Speaker, the tragic story of Shadrach adds to the growing menace of police and military personnel attacking, harassing, brutalizing, and killing innocent citizens unjustly. The raging menace marks a worrying escalation of violence in this country. Enough is enough. No cause can justify such a level of police brutality and the senseless killing of Shadrach. That is why we must, as a representative of the people, speak with one powerful voice and collectively condemn Shadrach's killing in no uncertain terms. Mr. Speaker, Article 15(1) and 2 of the 1992 Constitution of our Republic demand in no uncertain terms respect for human dignity as follows. 15(1) The dignity of all persons shall be inviolable. 2. No person shall, whether or not he is arrested, restricted, or detained, be subjected to A, torture, or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. B, any other condition that detracts or is likely to detract from his dignity and worth as a human being. Mr. Speaker, the police officers whose inhuman actions and inactions resulted in the tragic and unjust killing of Shadrach violated his sacred and protected rights under the Constitution. This is why I insist that the report of the self-serving police investigation published on the 7th February 2023 cannot be relied upon to ensure that Shadrach gets justice. Mr. Speaker, concerning this particular case, the Ghana Police Service is in a conflict of interest situation. It cannot be trusted to ensure transparency and/or accountability, mainly because it was the cruel action and inactions of members of the service that unlawfully claimed the life of Shadrach. It is curious and difficult to come to terms with the police claims that Shadrach died from asphyxiation and obstruction of the airway by a foreign body, and that 8 zipped bags containing dry leaves suspected to be narcotic drugs tied in a piece of black polythene were retrieved from the throat of the deceased. Mr. Speaker, it is pertinent to ask, when did these narcotic substances get into the throat of the deceased? Where are the footages from the West Hills Mall that show the deceased entry into the mall and the various shops he entered? Where is the footage that showed where he ran to out of fear that he would be arrested? Where is the footage that showed where he was handcuffed, beaten, and tased and tased, Mr. Speaker, I ask, who watches the watchman? Mr. Speaker, the practice where the police administration investigates personnel and officers accused of severe violations of citizen human rights must end. Such investigations yielded no satisfactory outcomes in the past for victims, families, or parties seeking justice. These practices have eminently contributed to the prevailing mistrust between the people and the police in our beloved country. Mr. Speaker, it is in this light of these that I call on this august House to invoke its legislative authority to set up an independent police commission and grant it the powers to investigate, for example, instances where the police stand accused of unlawful killing. Such a response will help curb actual or potential cover-ups in the future. Mr. Speaker, kindly permit me to state that I have petitioned the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice, SHRAJ, to investigate the horrifying human rights violation meted out to Shadrach. Let me also use this opportunity to urge the Commission to quicken its investigation into the matter to give the grieving family closure. Mr. Speaker, while the SHRAJ carries out its constitutional functions in respect of this matter, I humbly pray that the statement be referred to the Committee on Defense and Interior to conduct an independent parliamentary probe into the true circumstances leading to the death of Shadrach and to make relevant recommendations that will inform policy and legislative response to avoid any future reoccurrence. Mr. Speaker, the family of Shadrach Alu, the people of Mpataba, and my entire constituent of Jomro trust in your leadership and call on you to support their desperate quest for justice for their beloved son. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your attention.
Leader, I'll come to you. I'll come to you. Let me start from Medina.
Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me place on record that this is a matter that I have followed personally, and I have been involved in all the action out there to demand for justice for and on behalf of Shadrach. And Mr. Speaker, let me thank the maker of the statement for this very, very timely statement at a time that many people are losing confidence in the neutrality of police to investigate itself when there are allegations of violation by men in uniform. Mr. Speaker, let me place on record that the Ghana Police Service is an agency of state. And when it comes to respect for fundamental human rights, it is not discretionary to the Ghana Police Service, just as it is not discretionary to any agency of state. Mr. Speaker, permit me to read the language of Article 12.1, which says, with your permission, Mr. Speaker, I read. It says that the fundamental human rights and freedoms enshrined in this chapter shall, the language is mandatory. It says, shall be respected and upheld by the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, and all other organs of government. Mr. Speaker, it is time for us to understand that we cannot continue to do things, the way we do them. The kind of value we place on human life. We cannot continue to treat fellow human beings, with such lack of dignity and such disrespect. Mr. Speaker, this is a very young man, and this young man could have been anyone's son, It could have been your son, Mr. Speaker. It could have been your brother, your sister. It could have been our relative. It could have been a relative to any of us here. And Mr. Speaker, I would not be happy to see a relative of mine ostensibly being arrested by a police officer in handcuffs, whilst in handcuffs, being beaten, being tased until he becomes unconscious. And whilst these pieces of evidence are available, the police is refusing to hold its officers accountable. Why should this be, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I believe that being a house that has a duty to provide oversight, over some of this government and some of these executive actions, it is really appropriate that this statement has been made here and that this house will take some very serious steps to address this situation so that we don't have recurrence of this thing. Mr. Speaker, it is a scar on our conscience for our police officers to continue to mistreat ordinary citizens that they are supposed to protect. Mr. Speaker, thank you very much for the opportunity to contribute to this statement.
Yes, let me come to Honorable Atachi.
Yes, I told you that.
Right, Honorable Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to make a few comments in relating to this very all-important statement, the sanctity of human life. And Honorable Speaker, first of all, my heart goes out to the family of Shadrach Allo. And they must be grieving because when you have a young man who is 33 years old, and is not properly formed, has not paid his dues to society, and the family have not had an optimum benefit of a son. This is a premature death which is of grave consequences. Honorable Speaker, my chief concern is about how some people believe that when you are in uniform, you are above the law. And this is where we should try as much as possible to inform people that when you, first of all, you were a civilian, or you were a civilian first, before you were enlisted. How can the uniform that you subsequently wear give you an impunity that you can do as you please? As a matter of fact, in some jurisdictions, the best protection the citizens will have is the police. But when the police will become an instrument of cruelty, at least much to be desired. And I do not have the full facts, and I also, by my training, anything under investigation, sometimes you do not have to pre-charge all the matters because you go into the matter. But recently, what is very, very interesting for the entire country is how the law enforcement agencies forget about the power of the mobile phone. These so-called security men, they lose sight of the fact that the mobile phone is such a weapon that all your idiocy and your buffoonery and your lawlessness can be captured on the phone. And that will be ocular proof of matters against you. I wonder why people who are supposed to be intelligent believe they can do anything and get away with it. Well, right now, if you have the misfortune of doing something bad, somebody will stand afar and capture the entire act. Honorable Speaker, what is hurting my soul, and I don't know whether it's true or not, for them to trump up a charge or false alarm. I don't believe that this statement is true. But if this statement is true, then this nation, we are not safe. For a policeman to raise a false alarm in relation to an innocent man who is about his duties or doing some business in a mob, in order to secure mob justice or whatever. The criminal dimension to this case, I cannot finish talking about it. All right, Speaker, I believe that the maker of the statement has helped the whole nation. She's waking up the conscience of this nation to some of these things. So whatever investigation of consequence that we should have, I'll be with this whole committee of this House looking at it, because I have oversight responsibility in terms of what the police does and rest of them. It's most welcome. Whatever will help, if it's even a dimension of strike or what they normally call service inquiry. I've been a lawyer in which somebody was arraigned, a policeman, and I went to defend him during the service inquiry. But what is very, very gratifying, that nobody can run away from what we call video evidence. Video evidence is so strong that no matter the dexterity of a lawyer you bring, you won't run away from the consequences of such foul actions of this nature. So, Honourable Speaker, all that I will say is that let our security forces beware that we are in a civilized and a democratic environment. That's what we should bear in mind. Some bestiality should not be encouraged. When people are being, whipped terribly, there's one which is so offensive to my sense of law. That is said that somebody has been killed. Let's beat the innocent so we find the killer. I have never seen any absurdity in my life. That if you can't find a killer, beat the innocent. And in so do you find a killer. We can celebrate this kind of, with the greater Bangladesh in this democratic dispensation we have. And we are craving the indulgence of those who are supposed to investigate these matters. And they should go about and make an example out of some of these situations. That when a soldier or a policeman is imprisoned, and they have to be imprisoned, no matter, even if it was a colonel in the army or is whoever, commissioner of police, if you went that route, in which you are degrading fellow, Ghanaians, and the man is screaming when he's being beaten. I said, what kind of, bestiality is this one? And what do you want to achieve? Honourable Speaker, I want to end because I'm being educated that there is a meeting right away to go and commiserate with one of our own. Honourable Speaker, we shouldn't encourage impunity coming from our so-called security forces. If they can't protect us, yeah, they are so-called. Because what is the meaning of that? The one who is a security man with the greatest of respect has turned into something else. So please, Honourable Speaker, this matter should be investigated in whatever way that we make sure that we find out why this is the matter. And the traducers of the law should be punished in no uncertain terms. That is the way to go. I'm grateful for this space.
Thank you very much. May I take 1-1? Yes, 1-1. So among the two, which one should I?
Sami for understanding. Sami has understood.
Okay. Honourable Bawa. Yeah, bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this statement made by Honourable Dorcas Tofe. First and foremost, let me commiserate with the family of Shadrach and the people of Jomoro for their loss. Indeed, when I was reading the statement, I felt so sad, and I realized that any of us could fall victim of such a situation. To have a guy who was preparing to leave Germany, and I can understand when that was captured in the statement, because in the face of our economic challenges, when people have an opportunity to seek greener pasture somewhere, it's always an excitement period for a family. So for the boy to have gone to the Accra Hills Mall the West Hills Mall to get his items to travel, just to meet his untimely death, was something that was so sad. But, Mr. Speaker, what worries me is that all of us had the opportunity of watching the videos on social media. Is the fact that the guy at one point, irrespective of whether he was guilty or not, of what charge he had been given, the fact that he had been subdued and then he had been put on handcuffs, to have gone to the extent of still brutally attacking the boy was something that was an affront to the dignity of every human being. Indeed, one of the things that came to my mind was that I remember when in May 2020, when George Floyd was killed in the US, Ghana, we were proud enough as a country to sit here and do vigil night for George Floyd. In America, meanwhile, just at our own back door, we are brutalizing individuals. In fact, just about a month ago, in my constituency, a guy who was wrongly identified as an armed robber, before he could say that he was not the person, he had been beaten to the extent that he had so much injuries on the the mid part of his body, only for them to realize that he was wrongly identified. And this was a guy who was just sitting at his beer bar selling drinks and was wrongly identified, and that happened to him. The issue of Asham, and I believe that was what my ranking member was alluding to. The issue of Ashama, where 184 people were subjected to brutality. And from the police investigation, the people who have now been arrested, none of them is linked to the 184 that were arrested and detained in the name of trying to fight crime. In fighting crime, you commit serious crimes. I think that it is time for us to begin to start looking at the police service and generally the security service, that when they commit such atrocities, they investigate themselves. And that's where the conflict of interest comes in. And in this country, we use our mouth to speak without working. For many years, everybody has been talking about the establishment of an independent police complaints commission. And nobody's doing anything about it. So if I have a problem, I just go to the police service, report one of their own to them. They sit down and give you a postmortem that you cannot verify. And they say, this is exactly what has happened. And the person is treated, excuse my language, like an animal. It is important that we begin to start taking a second look at this. And Mr. Speaker, I would want to indulge you that today, at the end of this particular, the contribution on this, refer this thing to the appropriate committee to investigate this. Because, look, I believe that there are a number of people who have died and who have not heard. It's just because maybe Shadrach has a very active member of parliament who has decided to bring this to the fore. There are a lot of people in our communities who are going through these things, and people are not there to speak for them. So, in concluding, I once again want to thank the maker of the statement for what he has done, and also to appeal to you that this statement should not be one of our usual talking that will be captured in the hazard, but that you will refer this to the appropriate committee to investigate and let us come to the finality of this. I cannot trust the findings of the police. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
Yes, leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me thank the maker of the statement.
Honorable, hold on. You'll be cheating this side.
Yeah, so, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
But be brief for us.
Yes, to comment on the statement and to also send my condolences to the family. Mr. Speaker, as we will continue to strengthen the human rights and reduce the abuse, I believe strongly that the issue definitely has to be under investigation, and that is where we should push as much as we can as a House of Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I also want to caution a letter that when issues come in this way, we should be a bit circumspect, because investigation is underway. We are not careful, some comments and statements that we may make here, the outcome of the investigation may come to a point where we realize that we might have made some statements here that wouldn't be the rightful statement to have made if we had had the outcome of the investigation. And as a house, whatever we say as a house of records, and whatever we say here as well is a public information. And therefore, if we are not too circumspect about certain positions that we take when the issues come up, we may either affect the outcome of the investigation or might have made some statement that might affect the investigation. Then also, the outcome of the investigation, hindsight may show that if we had gotten the total investigation outcome, we wouldn't have made certain statements. I always want to caution that. But, Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, I believe that we need to defend this democracy. And the democracy that will not be able to defend the right of the individual place the democracy into the hands of the people, and at the end of the day, any other thing can bring instability. So we are pleading that the enforcement agency and the civil societies, parliament, the advocacy must go on for us to know what is the right and at what point should we exercise the enforcement. But also to caution that we should also be circumspect as a house when an issue comes this way. Some of the statements that we make may contribute adversely to the outcome of the investigation, or may erroneously give some impressions that the outcome of the investigation may prove otherwise. I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable Deputy Minority.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Let me thank the maker of the statement, the MP for Jomoro, Honorable Dokas Akutofe, for a very important statement and for recounting this sad incident. The Speaker, what got my attention is a line when he stated that the deceased was handcuffed while he was on the floor, beaten several times, and was heard groaning helplessly in pain, virtually begging for his life. The Speaker, I saw a video footage of this young Shadrach on the floor with police officers surrounding him. He was groaning, fighting for his life. And then I saw one person who walked in and asked them, this guy needs to be rushed to the hospital. And then the first thing that came to mind is that as our police service, have they been trained on the first aid, emergencies, and how to deal with people in such circumstances? Mr. Speaker, in this statement, I think I'm being very, very careful because I see that the pathologist came out with his own report. And the worst thing that we can do on this floor of Parliament is to be questioning even critical institutions and the work they do. But Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we focus on the recommendation that has been made by the honorable member, the maker of the statement. Because, and the honorable member who spoke last, had said that we should be careful because the matter is under investigation. Let me make it clear. The police have issued a statement that the investigation is complete. It's obvious. And that they've referred the matter to the Attorney General for advice. It is very, very clear that if that is the case, then it means that as far as the police is concerned, the investigation is closed. Mr. Speaker, the point that must be made and stressed here is that we have gone to the point where we must have an independent institution so that in circumstances where the police is in conflict like this, they do not investigate themselves. We must have an independent body to investigate police under such circumstances. The stories of police in such circumstances, in conflict of interest situations, is becoming too many. And this must be addressed. Mr. Speaker, it is very, very important. But Mr. Speaker, as a country, as a society, we must really revisit how this incident happened and ask ourselves. Sometimes you hear, Julo, then everybody, if you can't find a stone, anything. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Atachi made a statement. We have decided for ourselves the ways in which we seek justice, the laws that guide us in everything we do. And that is what we must all strive to achieve as a society. The circumstance that led to the death of Shadrach is a very sad one. Mr. Speaker, granted that the story that has really come out that is true, You look at the story and I ask the question. Let's assume that this person was in a suit with a tie, a nice shirt, and was not in a baggy shirt and dressed like the way Shadrach was dressed. Would the police have suspected he was a thief? Would they have rushed him? Mr. Speaker, 66 years since our independence, have we gotten to a point in a society where we can say that just because somebody, the way he looks, how he's dressed, is guilty? Is that a society that we have all been yearning for? Is that a society that we want? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. An old lady told me a story. He says, if you are dressed in a suit and you get out of a car and you forget to pay, all they will say is that, sir, you forgot to pay. If you are dressed shabbily, they will rush on you and pound on you that you are trying to run away. Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate, but this is true. And that is exactly what happened to Shadrach. A guy, it turns out, it doesn't matter how he looked that day. It turns out he belongs to a family, he has a child, he is loved by his family, he is ready to travel. So, Mr. Speaker, there are clear lessons for just because of how somebody looks. But the important point that I want to make, and I'm being brief, is that the maker of the statement has asked that this statement and this matter be referred to the Defense and Interior Committee for a parliamentary investigation. And Mr. Speaker, I will urge you that after this statement, you must refer this matter to the Committee of Interior, Defense and Interior. It is very, very critical. Mr. Speaker, and I urge the Committee of Interior to take steps to make sure we can get to the point where we can have an independent body to investigate the police service under such circumstances. Mr. Speaker, that is the only way that we can have justice in circumstances like this. On that note, Mr. Speaker, let me thank the maker of the statement and pray that the family of Shadrach will find some solace in the statement we made today and pray that they will find justice for their son Shadrach. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Deputy Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Ola Rotimi wrote in The Gods Are Not to Blame that when it rains, it doesn't fall on one roof only. It therefore comes as no surprise that in spite of all that we're doing to fortify ourselves as a people, to embrace democracy, we are experiencing this. But even so, mighty America reported a similar incident on the 25th of May 2020. And I read how the news reported it. George Perry Floyd Jr. was an African-American man who was murdered by a police officer in Minneapolis, Minnesota, during an arrest made after a store clerk suspected Floyd may have used counterfeit $20 bill to make payments. So, Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate the mighty democracy experienced this and continues to experience this, and we are also seeing this in spite of efforts at ensuring that Article 15 of the Constitution, as ably quoted by my respected colleague, Dorcas Tofe, is enforced and respected. Mr. Speaker, I shall anchor my own views on 2 points. 1, public education, and 2, the need to investigate the conduct of our law enforcement. On the issue of public education, let me route it through paragraph 7 and 8 of the maker's own statement. And I shall read same aloud at the risk of being repetitive and expand my submission thereto. This is what the maker says. Mr. Speaker, between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on the day that Shadrach prematurely lost his life, he had visited the West Hills Mall to buy some items for his new apartment. He was in the company of one Ibrahim Sechi. As they were walking through the mall, the two men were stopped by a police officer who demanded to search the deceased without warrant. The said police officer had not, at the time, indicated that he had arrested the deceased. As a result, the deceased refused to be searched by the police officer. And paragraph 9 goes on to say, when the officer insisted on conducting the said search, Shadrach left the bag he was carrying with the police officer and took to his heels. So the phrase "took to his heels" is where I want to proceed with my comment. So, Mr. Speaker, Ghanaians must know that when they are faced with such a situation, there's no need to run away. And I think it means something that we must all begin to take serious as parliamentarians. If you've done nothing wrong, why should the new uniform scare you? So we must educate our people to appreciate the work of law enforcement. If this account, which I verily believe seems to be true, is the truth and factual, and I trust Honorable Tofe to have done her research, then Shadrach had no cause to worry. But that is not to mean we should justify what was meted out to him. But we should then educate our people. And it should be a big lesson. Because many people subject themselves to all manner of ordeals because of fear. Why did he run? And sometimes also when the police accost us, the way we approach, whether as politicians or well-placed businessmen in society, do you know me? We do it. It's true. Sometimes the way we carry ourselves, we create unnecessary antagonism with law enforcement, unnecessary. And some of these young men, sometimes, how they act and all that. So let's push Shadrach's issue on board to act in a manner that would assist law enforcement. So, without more, I believe the point is made that we need to educate our people on their rights. We need to let the people know how to conduct themselves when they are faced with such a situation. We also need to make sure that day in, day out in the various schools, as MPs, we make some contribution to ensure such civic education continues so that people would appreciate what the law has for them and what uniformed men are to do in situations like this.
Apart from the funeral donation.
The second point is on the investigation. Yes. In the George Floyd's case, there was a live telecast of the proceedings in court. Law enforcement ensured that those involved were punished, at least administratively. But that was after investigation. I am a bit concerned, and in all fairness to my respected colleague from Jomoro, the honorable lady who made a statement, we should not go ahead of ourselves and assume guilt on the part of the police. That coming from where I come from, where I apply my trade as an officer of the court, I would want to proceed with caution. But rather, let's call on the police administration to, as a matter of urgency, undertake serious investigation and come out publicly with its findings. If it means a public hearing, I know the IGP Dampari is a very proactive person, up a police TV station and a police radio. At least I've gone there to see for myself. I think that if they really want to earn our trust, to believe that indeed they have what it takes to internally punish, they should conduct inquiry into this matter. Not only that, I call on Mr. Speaker, to invite the Defense and Interior Committee to look into this matter. It's very important. I say so because excesses in the actions of law enforcement will not end today. If you see a 300-year-old democracy still seeing brutalities, then a 30-year-old democracy is yet to see even the worst. So, Mr. Speaker, Parliament must not just do the talking, but must do the walking as well and ensure that action is taken. Having said this, as my main point by way of comment, let me say that the young man who has lost his life, obviously the family is pained. My condolences. And I know Honorable Tofe has not asked us to make contribution, but I would want to offer my token on behalf of the people of Ifutu, because we are all Guans. He's an Nzema man, okay? And the people of Ifutu will offer 5,000.
No ethnic association. What is this?
Yeah. Oh, Mr. Speaker, he hasn't spoken into the mic, so I will not say anything. The mic has captured it. Mr. Speaker, we are Ghanaians, but we belong to families and belong to clans. So I am saying that he is a Ghanaian first, but he's also my tribesman. So I would want to make a token of my contribution for the funeral.
Very well.
Mr. Speaker, so the people of Ifutu will contribute 5,000 Ghana cedis to support Shadrach's family, and we do so because we believe that he needs to be supported. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the treasure space.
Thank you very much. Honourable members, Honourable Tofik, did I hear you say you've made complaint to the SHRAG?
Yes, right, Honourable Speaker.
Okay, very well. Then on that note, I will make the referral to the Defense and Interior Committee, which is the internal one. I don't want us to have other committee which will be conflicting with the issue. So the statement is referred to the Defense and Interior Committee to look into it. I understand they are looking into the Ashama one, they can add it up. But, honourable members, so many referral has been made to committee chair, and we don't get the reports. It's becoming another issue. So, I hope the committee chair is not here. The ranking is also not here. Deputy ranking is here. Very well. So please, we want action within 2 weeks. We want to get your response by way of report from you within 2 weeks. On that note, Honourable Member, we thank you for your statement and all the contributors. We are so grateful to you all. Leadership.
Mr. Speaker, that's about all for the day. We are in your hands. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, we so much appreciate your endurance. You have been fantastic the past few days. We support the position of leader to adjourn.
Well, honorable members, I understand tomorrow business statement will be at 9 o'clock. Business committee will be meeting at 9. Unfortunately, our former speaker has lost the wife, and a lot of the members will be attending the 1 week rite in the morning. So tomorrow sitting will be at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. So we adjourn the House to tomorrow 11 a.m. Once again, we thank you all for your indulgence, and the House stands adjourned.